Fort Lauderdale, and thanks for all your calls this half hour. More of them coming up. We're joined in New York by Charles Gasparino with CNBC. Mr. Gasparino, welcome to the program this morning.
Thanks for having me.
We're here to talk about the executive compensation, what's been called a culture of entitlement. In fact, I want to read you some comments from an AP article, the Associated Press, about this very issue that Madeline Reed writes in the Associated Press. John Thain should have known the rules, he writes, that after all, when he became CEO of the New York Stock Exchange in 2004, he replaced Richard Grasso, a man who embodied the excesses and of the times and was forced out for taking a massive annual pay package, $187.5 million. Thain at the time accepted a smaller, much smaller, $4 million. But now the Wall Street wonderkin is gaining a similar notoriety. As the head of Merrill Lynch, he sped bonuses to several executives before Bank of America bought the investment firm on January 1st. He's also spent, accordingly to this article, $1.2 redecorating his Manhattan office, a decision that's invoking particular rage among Americans, including President Barack Obama. Did you hear the president's comments last week about this particular situation, about executive compensation, and what do you think the meaning behind that is?
Well, I have a little bit of insight into this in the sense that I've written a book about Dick Grasso, about his rise and fall. And I broke the story on CNBC and in my column for the Daily Beast about John Thain's office. Well, you know, this is a really complicated issue in this sense. You know, Dick Grasso did make a lot of money when he was at the New York Stock Exchange. It may have been excess, but in many ways he earned it. I mean, and here's the difference between what's going on now when you see John Thain, you know, throwing around, you know, $85,000, you know, throw rugs and, you know, $35,000 commodes and redecorating his office and looking for a bonus, and what Dick Grasso did. Dick Grasso made a lot of money. The New York Stock Exchange was very solvent at the time, and he made money not just for the stock exchange but for its members. That's a big difference than what's going on now. Well, the problem with Wall Street right now in this bonus situation is that you have a situation where Wall Street is paying itself bonuses when it's not making money, when it's being bailed out by the federal government, and then engaging in excesses like redoing offices, and if you read the New York Post, Sandy Weil, you know, flying on the company plane and the company jet. So this is why this is a particular problem now, and you know, John Thain in many ways embodies the problem because, listen, he didn't do anything illegal that we don't know if he did anything illegal. I don't have any evidence that he did anything illegal, but splurging for his office when he first took over at Merrill Lynch, when Merrill Lynch was really in the tanks. I mean, Merrill Lynch was losing money left and right. He had to lay people off. Was just insane. It was a tin ear, and it just shows the disconnect between Wall Street and Main Street. I'll tell you, you know, you can wring your hands over Dick Grasso's pay package all you want. He made people money. He made the stock exchange money. He made the members of the stock exchange money. You know, the guys now are not making money, and what I think is happening here is you see this huge disconnect that's grown wider. Even as the problems have become worse on Wall Street. I mean, the banking system is in effect insolvent without these government bailouts. And so amid this insolvency, you know, without the government stepping in and helping all these guys out, you have them, you know, splurging. And you know, never before have I, and I've been covering Wall Street now for, I would say, since almost 20 years. Never before have I seen the gap between Wall Street and Main Street wider than it is now. Now, that being said, I'll tell you this, and this is another column I wrote today for the Daily Beast. We have to stop beating up on Wall Street. We have to recognize one thing. We have a massive problem here, and it's a banking crisis. The financial meltdown is not over. It's still going on. All these banks are sitting on trillions of dollars, anywhere from $1 to $4 trillion of bad debt, of mortgages they can't sell. There has to be a fix. This fix will only come from Wall Street, because these are only people that understand these complex securities and how to do this sort of stuff. It's interesting, President Obama last week, as he was, you know, lashing out at greedy Wall Street execs, his administration was actually going behind the scenes and negotiating and talking with Wall Street executives on how best to craft this new financial bailout that they're going to be unveiling in the next couple of days. And they actually did listen to the street. I mean, at first, it looked like they were just going to go forward with this concept known as a bad bank, where they would try to buy all the securities on the books of the banks. And then when they spoke with the Wall Street executives, they determined that, you know what, that might not be the best route. We have to pull back, maybe do that in conjunction with other things, because, you know, we'd be buying, you know, as much as $4 trillion of this stuff that's almost impossible to price.
Charles Gasparino, I want to make sure that our viewers can weigh in here with their calls.
Sure.
Folks know Charles Gasparino from his work at CNBC, and he mentioned his book on Richard Grasso, King of the Club. Richard Grasso and the Survival of the New York Stock Exchange came out in 2007. The numbers are coming up on your screen, 202-737-0001 for Democrats. For Republicans, rather, Democrats 202-737-0002 and Independents 202-628-0205. Quickly back to the issue of executive compensation. There was an article that quoted Edward Freeman from the Business Roundtable that said, he basically said, look, the long hours that many bankers work feed this what he called attitude of entitlement. Do you think that's the case?
Yeah, I mean, Wall Street is a very it's so complicated. There's a lot of gray here, you know what I'm saying? I mean, there are clear cuts of black and white when you look at what John Thain did, you look at Sandy Weill on the plane, that's clearly excess, but there's a lot of black and white here. There's a lot of gray here. And, you know, some of these guys and gals, you know, they work hard, they do the right thing, and in a sense, they make their companies money. And in making money, they're not doing anything wrong. And I think the problem with what the president is doing and some of this class warfare is that we are demonizing a lot of people that are doing the right thing, as well as, you know, taking shots at the people that aren't. And I'll tell you, far be it for me, I'm the guy that I've been writing a lot of this stuff. But there is an excess here where we're going way too far on the populism, where we're demonizing the business class. And I'll tell you, you can have all the stimulus programs you want. This country the economy will not come back unless the business community is revived, unless the banking system is revived, unless capitalism, you know, in some ways trumps, you know, the demise of the financial system as we've seen in the last, it's actually been the last 2 years. You know, there's no way this country's coming back without that. You can't create enough job programs. You can't stimulate through infrastructure projects. You can't, you can't mow the lawn of the White House enough. This country's only coming back if we get the capitalist system back running the way it should. And yes, there are excesses all the time. This was a massive excess. I mean, Wall Street is, you know, I'm not crying for these folks because, you know, Wall Street got us into this problem. But we have to realize, you know, what we're doing here. We just, you know, there's a demonization going on against good people as well.
What is the proper role of the federal government then in mandating, dictating, or otherwise detailing what executive salaries should be? Or is there a role?
I don't believe there should be a role of the federal government telling us. I mean, they could barely get their own house in order, and they're going to tell companies what to pay people. And by the way, paying people is only part of the problem here. I mean, this is, you know, this was a listen. Let's step back a little bit. The crisis we're in right now, which involves all these mortgages on the books of all these banks. You know, guess who started it? The federal government. I mean, there was an initiative by the Clinton administration early on. Henry Cisneros, the HUD secretary, followed by Andrew Cuomo, his successor, followed by whoever succeeded those guys in the Bush administration. You know, people I can't recall, to take housing from 60% of the population up to 70. Well, the only way you do that is through the sort of mechanics of Wall Street, through securitizing those loans that are on the books of the bank so you can take them off the books so they can keep lending. That was an initiative created by government. Fannie and Freddie, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, that's government. You know, that's government pushing initiatives to spread out home ownership to everybody, including people that generally couldn't afford it. By doing all that, you created a bubble. And the bubble popped. And when the bubble popped, this is the pain we're facing. Now, I'm not excusing Wall Street, because Wall Street fed the bubble, tried to exploit the bubble, made a lot of money off the bubble, and in the end was careless and insanely careless, and it's hurting the financial system right now because of that.
Let's get some
bubble, let me just make this point. That bubble was started by government.
Let's get some viewer comments. Charles Gasparino with us. Jewett, North Carolina, Jewett, New York on our Democrats line. Hi.
Yes, gentlemen. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm a Democrat. I'm also an entrepreneur. I've been in business for 16 years. I've always been on the social side of things, but I've always trusted Republicans to do the right thing, to keep business, to keep government, small. I thought that Reagan did a good job in that respect, so I'm a bit of a moderate Democrat, but I favor the social side of things, because I feel that there, but for God's grace, go I. I'm calling because I'm worried about doctrinaire thinking and ideology. I think that the great lesson of 2008, the election, was that the nation rejected a method of managing government that relied on ideology, my way or the highway. No interest in asking questions, even less interest in listening to answers. And I call to Mr. Gasparino specifically because I watch CNBC daily. I have it on the air constantly. And I see a lot of doctrinaire thinking and a lot of ideology. And I would ask you to go back to your fellow journalists and request that they be more open to listening to questions and thinking about the answers.
Thanks, New York. We'll get a response.
Well, I would just tell the gentleman that, is he still on the line?
No, he's not, Charles.
No, I would just tell him that, I don't know what broadcast he's watching, because one of the great things about CNBC is that we present all types of views. I mean, there are a lot of different people that speak out on CNBC. It's not all right. It's not all left. It's a mixture, and it's a debate about those issues. So we go out of our way to get both sides of the story out there. We're not a political network, although people have political views. You can't divorce. There's no such thing as objectivity. I think it was David Halberstam, the great journalist, who said objectivity is BS. But so what we do have on CNBC is you have straight reporting. People like myself give straight reports about the news and what's going on, and then there are times when we discuss those news, that straight reporting, and that's when you see you see a range of viewpoints being expressed.
Charles Gasparino, there's a story this morning about the consumer spending for the month of December. It fell for a 6th straight month, reports the Associated Press, as recession-battered households worry about surging layoffs boosted their savings rates, the highest since May. Is the American consumer as the driver of the economy? Is that era past?
Well, no. I mean, we're still the American consumer will be driving the economy for as long as it. I think that's what our economy is based on: consumption from the American consumer. The problem is right now we're in a recession, and it could get worse. That's why dealing with this banking problem is just as important, I believe, as dealing with the stimulus package. I mean, it's one thing to stimulate the economy through the sort of giving people condoms and mowing the White House lawn. The infrastructure part of that bill apparently is very small, but unless you get the banks to start lending, and that unless that happens, we're going to be in this recession for a very long time, and we're going to see some stuff coming out of the Obama administration, I believe, later in this week, that gets us to get maybe present some solutions to that, because what's been done so far has not solved that puzzle, and that's what we need. We need to basically revive lending, revive the capitalist system. Without that, we're going nowhere.
Fox Lake, Wisconsin is next on our Independence line. Welcome.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen. Wall Street is more or less like a Ponzi scheme. It's just like the Madoff deal. As long as you got more money coming into the system works. Right now we got all these baby boomers that are retiring, and they're pulling money out of Wall Street, and there's less of these new investors that are putting money in. So in the past, Wall Street worked very well when you had more investors going in and less taken out. So as I see it, there's going to be 80 million of us baby boomers retiring, and there's very few new investors investing into the market. So Wall Street works as long as you're putting in, people can take out as long as there's less people taking out. It works the same way as the Madoff deal. Another thing I know,
I would say, sir, that's an incredibly simplistic view of Wall Street. Stocks go up not just because people put money in it, that does help, but stocks go up. People put money in stocks when the economy is revived, and so it's not just the fact that you have more baby boomers. It does help when you have more people putting money in the markets. But I will say this: if the economy was in better shape, the market wouldn't be where it is today, and which is where it was 10 years ago, essentially. And not a lot of that has to do with the sort of shift in demographics. A lot of that has to do, I believe, with the economy and just the desperate shape of the banking system.
Back to the issue of executive compensation, I just want to get your quick reaction to a column yesterday, Sunday Times, by Maureen Dowd called "Disgorge the Wall Street Fat Cats." She writes about at least the old robber barons. She writes, made great products. When you make money out of money, unmoored, from morality and regulation, it must unhinge you. How else to explain corporate welfare queens partridge hunting in England, buying French jets? Mr. Obama was less bracing during the campaign when AIG executives were caught at posh retreats. After taking an $85 billion bailout, he called for them to be fired and reimburse the federal treasury. Now that he has the power to act, Mr. Obama spoke, and as his spokesman Robert Gibbs put it, like a disappointed parent that doesn't embarrass you in the mall, but you feel like you let somebody down. Maureen Dowd writes, that's not enough, not with the president and Geithner continuing to dole out what may end up being $1 trillion to these, quote, malefactors of great wealth, as Teddy Roosevelt put it. Your thoughts on that?
She's, factually completely accurate, you know what I'm saying? But I think it misses the bigger point here is that at some point, listen, like I said, I've engaged in it, and it feels good beating up on these guys because they are so wretched. I mean, when I did the story about John Thane, you don't know how, it touched a nerve, and it felt good to say, look how this guy is just, screwing the system over, buying a, $1,400 waste paper basket while people are out of work. And but I think we have to pull back here a little bit and think about what we're doing when we're engaging in this type of constant populist rhetoric. The business community, whether we like it or not, Wall Street included, is going to be part of the solution. It's a reason why President Obama is hiring Wall Street guys, in key points. I mean, there are some very good people on Wall Street, and at some point we have to put aside the populist rhetoric, put aside the class warfare, and engage Wall Street in a way to figure out how to get out of this crisis. Because there's just so much we can. I mean, listen, there is a solution that needs to happen here because we're not there yet. And the only people that really understand this stuff is Wall Street. Now, I have friends of mine who are far left of center who say, when I tell them this, they say, well, you're going to rely on the Wall Street guys to figure it out. They'll be the guys that they'll figure out a way to make money, and it won't benefit everybody else. And I don't believe that. I think there are a lot of good people on the street, and I think we need them to help us get out of this mess, because this mess is very deep and very disturbing. And listen, I don't like throwing around the D word in terms of depression, but unless we deal with this banking crisis, this country is going to be in a recession for a very long time. One
more call here, Chula Finney, Alabama, on our Democrats line. Hi.
Hey, good morning. Mr. Gasparino from CNBC, he says a Wall Street cheerleader, and that's what he's been for the last 4 years. That whole TV network.
Nobody, the people on Wall Street wouldn't agree with you, sir, but go ahead.
Oh, yeah, but I'm talking about...
They complain every day about my stuff.
You're anti-labor, you're all about globalism. That $350...
I am not all about globalism. My father was an iron worker, sir. A union iron worker.
That $350 billion that the banks are wanting right now, they're wanting in on that $800 billion too, but we need to be just starting a taxpayers bank with that money that don't own a bunch of toxic accents and let that bank owned by the taxpayers compete against these guys.
Alabama, thanks for your call. Charles Gasparino, some final thoughts on what do you think President Obama will do or announce later this week regarding a bank rescue plan?
Listen, I think he'll basically announce a series of measures. I mean, at first last week they were thinking about going with this bad bank that buys all the toxic assets. I think they've shifted from that. I mean, this is a moving target, so let's don't wait until see how it comes out. But from what I'm hearing, this is going to be a range of options. and including probably something that addresses, the sort of anger that we just heard from the gentleman from Alabama about executive pay. I mean, there is a lot of angry people out there, but I would tell these people, just, suck it up a little bit. Populism only gets you so far. And by the way, I love the fact that I'm a Wall Street apologist now.
Sure.
I'm going to go tell the memo to Wall Street. I'm apologizing for me.
Charles Gasparino.
A good laugh out of that.
Charles Gasparino of CNBC, thank you for being with us this morning.
Anytime.